I'm not sure if you've seen the latest Pro Transition Pack for LumaFusion, which is included in the Creators Bundle 2022. And this is definitely an upgrade from the first one. The transitions are insane. But if you're on the fence of getting one of the bundles, I want to run you through the entire process of putting a short sequence together so you can get the most out of the different things. And you've probably seen the promo video as well, and in that promo video you could see the text following the transition as well. So that's the first part we're going to go through today, and then we're going to put together the zoom, the slides, the elastic, the handheld camera transitions, and so on. So without further ado, let's head over to the iPad so we can check out this brand new preset bundle for LumaFusion. So here on the timeline in LumaFusion, I prepared a couple of clips here which we can use to put together a short sequence here using the Pro transitions from the Creators Bundle version 2. Now you've probably seen in the promo video that I used some text as well at the beginning and throughout the video, and the text was kind of following the same transition and movement of the transitions in the video, right? So I thought let's start with that, just in case you want to implement that into your video as well, and if you want to have the text sort of following the transition and make things a little bit better, so we don't have the transition going on and then you have the static text just standing on top of the transitions and videos. So that's the first thing that we're gonna do. We're gonna just create a transition and we're gonna add text to that so you can see how it's done, just in case that you want to just rush away and do that yourself. So after creating the text layer, we're gonna go into edit and just change it to the way that we want it to be. So I'm just gonna type welcome and change the font, and I'm also gonna add a black box behind the text so it pops a little bit more than just having the average text. So now we're gonna duplicate that as well, and we're just gonna change the text here to 2, and we're gonna resize the box. So now we have welcome to, and this is basically the only thing we're gonna use now, just to show you how it works and how easy it is to add the text to the transitions as well. If you want to make yourself your own intro or promo video, or you know, spice up your social media like your reels or shorts, you can add some text and make that look awesome. Now let's move over to the transition project here and find the transition we want to use. So for the first one here, let's go with a simple whip slide here to the right, and if you take a look at the transitions here as well, you can see that those are marked in green. You can also see this on the touch bar on the top here. Everything which is colored is the transition. So you see this when you play through the timeline or scrub through the timeline as well, but you select the transition that you want, and in this case we're going to choose the slide one here, or the whip one, and multi-select that and then choose the clipboard and copy. Now we're going to move back to our current project here, and we can either go to the cut between the two clips and then paste the transition there, or we can go to the beginning of our sequence or to the end of our sequence and then paste the transition templates. Now for this first one, we're going to go to the beginning, and the next one we can do in between the clips. So now we pasted this one in the beginning here. Again, we need to multi-select it, and we're going to place it on top of the clips here and make the lines or the cut match with the cut of the video layers below. So it will look something like this. Now once this is done here, we're gonna make some additional cuts to the video and the text layer underneath, so it matches the length and the duration of the transition template. Now, if we take a look at the transition template here, we can see that the transition in and out both contains of 2 layers each. And that means for each layer we're going to add will be 2 layers. So in this case, with the videos and the text, that would be 4 layers. But since we want to minimize the amount of real estate that we use on our timeline, because maybe we want to add some overlays and some other things as well, we actually gonna select the 2 layers of video and the 2 layers of text and copy those and open up a new project, and this also has to be the same settings as the project that we are working on. So once this is exported, we're going to go back over to our project and we're going to import the rendered or the exported file here, and you can now see that this only contains one layer, whilst the tracks 1 and 2, which is the same, the text and video files, contains 2 layers. So what we can do now is to just multi-select everything and place it next to the video here at the beginning of the project. We can also multi-select the parts that we use to export this smaller file or this one layer and delete those. Once this is done, what I like to do is to duplicate them one time first, and also multi-select the 2 parts individually. So first the left part and place that on the left side, and then the right part and place that on the right side. So now we have everything duplicated. So now we can move over to the transition template and choose the clipboard and copy, and move over to the layer on the same track and choose clipboard and paste. And we're going to do this with everything here, the bottom layer of the transition template and also the left side of the transition template. So we're going to copy and match the layers, copy the keyframes and paste them on our current or our own video. And once this is done, we can delete the transition template in between, and then we can scrub through here and we can see the smoothness of the animation. But there is, you have the option to maintain the text at the beginning, so the text starts with the video, or if you don't want the text to start with the video, you can simply make a cut at your desired length, and then you can trim it down or extend it, and then we can go into edit on the text layer and over to frame and fit, and we can simply keyframe this in so we have an animation coming in with the text as well, and then the text will follow the transition animation later on once it gets to those transition parts. This is not the smoothest animation that I made, but I think you get the point here. So you can make your own animation if you want to do that, or just keep the text static when the video begins, or if you use some overlays or blend modes or opacity changes to the text, it's all up to you how you want to add the text as well. So if we take a look at this now, we see that the text is coming in with the animation, and then we have the transition starting as well. Now let's delete the remaining text layers here. We don't want to use them right now, and let's add another transition in between these 2 clips here, so we have the transition sequence continuing. So moving over to the transition project here again, let's find another one here. Let's take one which has a little bit more layers to it. So we have this spin transition. Let's multi-select that and then copy, and then move over to our project, and then now we can go in between the 2 clips here. Just to be safe, I always move a little bit to the left or right, and then I use the skip to the next cut button here. That will just make sure that you don't cut away any parts of your video. And once this is placed, we can choose the clipboard and paste the transition, and as we can see here, we have the transition in between the 2 clips here. So next step now is to cut your clip on the right side and left side to match the length of the transition layers. And once this is done, you can just duplicate the layers of your video and then copy the keyframes from the transition template over to the layer of your video, but make sure that you copy and paste from the same track. So we're going to take the track 2 here of the transition layer and copy that, and then we're going to paste that on our video, which is also on track number 2. Now, once we've done this with the beginning and end part of the transition, we can delete the transition template in the middle here, and we can play through the transition here to see what it looks like. And here we can see we have that bouncing at the beginning, and then it starts to rotate, and we have a perfectly smooth spin transition. Now, before we do a longer playback of the sequence here, let's add another transition here. And for this one, maybe we want to add an elastic transition. So let's find an elastic transition that we want to add. We're just going to multi-select the entire transition part, which is highlighted in colors. Then we're going to choose copy, and we're going to paste this in between the 2 clips. So we're going to repeat the process. We're going to make sure that the layers are matching in frames and in length, and we're going to copy the effect and the keyframes from the transition template over to the clips that we have on our timeline. Now for this one, what I like to do is to disable the clip snapping option so I don't move anything around on my timeline. So once I disable the clip snapping feature here, you can see when I drag the clip, nothing will follow on the timeline. So we basically keep everything in the same position here. And that allows me to move this clip and then just cut it at the end so it matches the transition. And once you disable the clip snapping feature, you will have a blank layer which you can delete, or you can replace it with other clips, or you can just enable the clip snapping again, and then you can add your own clips to this blank spot or the area where the blank spot is, or you can just delete it or keep it as it is. You're free to do whatever you like. This is just will be a placeholder just to keep everything in place. But since we don't need this right now, since this is the beginning of our sequence and we kind of edit the sequence as we go here now, we can delete this. So moving over to the transition again here, we can see that the R layer is matching the length of the transition part as well. So what we can do now is to select the layer of our video, and we can make a cut, and we can duplicate this, and we're just going to make sure that we have the same matching layers as the transition template below. So once we have that, we can drag it to the right side of the transition here, make sure that we put the layers in the same place. And now again, just copy the keyframes and effects, just everything from the transition template over to your clip. Just make sure that you copy from the same track. Once this is complete, we can delete the transition template in between here. So now we have the elastic stretch transition here at the end as well. And if we just scrub through here, you can see that the transition ends a little bit before the actual clip duration is over. So what we can do here, if you want the next transition to come rapidly, a little bit faster, you can go to the point exactly where the transition stops. So that would be around here, and then we can just select the top layer, make a cut, the middle layer, and make a cut, and delete these two end parts. Now we can also use the bottom layer of the transition here to continue into the next one. So since this is the same as the next clip here on the timeline, so though these two are the same, this smaller one is just an extension of the transition layer here. So what we can do is to just delete this, and we can stretch out the bottom layer of the transition section of the video files as well, and we can just continue with that. It doesn't really matter, even though this has the keyframes applied. The keyframes will still be in the same position even if you extend the clip. Now let's go on and find another one here. Let's go with a zoom transition. We can go with a zoom in, or we can go with a zoom out. Now let's go with this one, this first one, the zoom in transition, because this contains, you see some black spots here as well. So let's work around that and see how we fix that. So we're gonna just multi-select these two parts. It's a little bit smaller transition, so it's a little bit faster to work with. So we're going to copy that and go over to our project, make sure that we are centered, and then paste the transitions. So here we have a very small 10 frames layer. So to make this just go rapidly from one transition and then into the next one, I'm going to take this small layer here and drag next to the end of the transition, which is before, and then make a cut so we have the bottom clip matching the transition layer. Now the clip at the end here we don't need, so we can just delete that. And I'm also going to take the transition layer and just put back in place and select it, and then copy the keyframes and paste it over to the video, which is to the left of it. Now we can also delete that part of the transition, and we can move over to the end and make sure that we cut the same amount of frames which is in the transition as well, and then duplicate 3 times and copy from the transition over to our clips. Once that is done, delete the transition layer, and we can now take a look here and see that this also contains those black empty spots in the video here. So that means we need to add a cinematic bar which is matching the blank spots of the video here. So let's go on and make a cinematic bar from scratch here. So we're going to start by adding a new overlay title. we're gonna move over to edit and we're gonna delete the text and add a new shape. This shape can be square and we're just gonna resize it so it fills the screen. The next step is to find the point in the video which has the largest empty spot of the black background in the video, which is down and up here. So once we have that spot, we're just gonna drag the shape and make sure it covers the black spot on top and bottom. Now this can be white to begin with, so it's easier to see the exact placement. And once we have the exact placement on either the top or bottom, we can change the color. And once we change the colors, we're gonna go over and duplicate this. I'm gonna scroll down on the right side until we find the center Y. So here we can see our center Y is minus 44.9, and that means the bottom one is gonna be plus 144.9. Moving back out to the timeline here, we have our perfect cinematic bar added. So if we stretch this out, we can go to the beginning here and do a playback, and we can see that this looks a whole lot more cinematic already, and we don't have those spots in the zoom transition either. Now, I think we need to add one more transition before we do a playback of this section here and before we trim it down. If we take a look at the timeline here, we can see it's kind of filled up, especially the part where we have the spin transition. You're not going to be able to add some overlays or anything like that on top of the transition because it fills up and takes up all the 6 layers or 5 layers, and we have the cinematic bar on top. Now let's just go over to the transitions here, and there is also a lot of different transitions, and not only the pro transitions, but we have some basic flash transitions and we have some easy whip transitions here as well, and these are really easy to use, or easier to use, because it only contains a 1 layer and the process is the same. So you copy these over to your project, and same method, you make sure that your clips has the same duration, and then you copy the keyframes from this over to your clip, and then you delete the transition template and you have the same transition applied. So let's find another one here that we want to use. We can take this handheld camera transition here, which I am really in love with. This is by far the best transitions, or the coolest transitions that I've made so far, and let's just copy these and paste them in our project here, and we're gonna do the same thing, just make some cuts here and duplicate and copy the keyframes. And once this is done to the beginning and the end part of the transition, we can go to the beginning here, and we can take a look from the spin part here, and we can see we have the spin coming in, and then we have the zoom and elastic, and then we have this handheld camera transition at the end. Now, like I said earlier, you can see the timeline and the project here is really clunky because the layers are filling up quite much, right? So the way that you can just trim this down to 1 layer and then apply everything you need and get a more perfect motion blur look to the transitions as well is to select all the parts where you have the transitions. Doesn't matter if there's clips without transitions in there. So what we're going to do is to multi-select all of these and then just copy, open a new project with the same settings, and then we're just going to export it right away with the same export settings that we want. So for this, just going to go with 1080p 30 megabits per second just to keep it a little bit smaller. And once the export is complete, we have the entire sequence here just in 1 layer. So now the next step is to delete all the parts that you just exported into a smaller layer or into 1 layer. So once this is deleted, you can now see that our timeline is basically free. It's empty, and we can apply overlays, other, lower thirds, texts, whatever we want to add, and we have the freedom to do that. So if we just add some overlays here, just a bunch of different overlays, and just make sure that we have the blend mode screen applied to all of them, just putting them together doesn't, just randomly, just to see how it looks. And if we play back here, this actually looks pretty good. Pretty good, nice. And like I said earlier, the motion blur is something that you would really like to have in the transition as well, just to hide those weak spots of the transitions, especially those where you see the duplicates of the video and the edges and the mirror effect and so on. So what we're gonna do is to go to the point here. We're just gonna scrub through on the timeline, and we're gonna go to the point right when the transition starts. And right when the transition starts, we're gonna go into edit of the layer, and then we're gonna go over to color and effects, and we're gonna apply the type of blur we want. So whether you want Gaussian blur, motion, swish, or zoom, you're gonna apply the one that you want. I'm gonna apply motion 20, and like I said, exactly here where we have the playhead now is where the transition is starting. So we're gonna add a keyframe at this position, and then we're going to take the radius down to 0, and then we're going to move out to the timeline again and just scrub through until we find where we can see the next clip. So that's going to be right here, and we're going to keep our playhead right there and go into edit again. Then we're going to select the motion 20 and apply a new keyframe. Out to the timeline again and repeat the process. Go to the point where the transition ends, and then into edit again, and here we're gonna apply another keyframe. So now we have 3 keyframes, and we're gonna go to the keyframe in the middle, and then we're gonna adjust the radius to our desired amount. So for this, I'm gonna go all in. We're gonna go with 70 here, which is a little bit hard on the system, especially if you do a playback in the best quality. So if we scrub through here now, you can see this is really hiding some of those weak spots in the transition here, and it really looks, it's so smooth. It's so smooth, and it looks really, really good. Now, what I'm going to do next now is to just go to the end of this clip and just delete everything, and we're going to do an export. So this project is 1080p. I'm going to upscale this to 4K, and then I'm just going to select the video quality 50 megabits, and I think that's it. And we're going to do an export, and let's take a look at the final export here of the sequence that we just put together. So there we have the short sequence which we put together in today's tutorial. Really simple to use, and once you get a hold of it, you know, it's going to be super fast. It's just drag and drop whatever you want, make the cut, apply it to the center of the 2 clips, and then just copy the keyframes, because that is going to be the easiest one. You could drag and drop, but the keyframes would definitely, you know, be misplaced a little bit, and you might have some broken parts in the transition. So copying the keyframes is definitely the #1 thing to do. Now first, you know, if you're still here, why? That's the first question. But since you got it this far, there is a new update coming to this bundle as well, which is social media assets and the YouTube Essential Pack version 2. So I will drop some presets from that, some subscribe buttons and so on, down all the way down at the bottom of the description. Just click on that link and you can download them right away to use in your videos if you made it this far. And if you made it this far, I really appreciate that you stick around for the entire duration and giving me some more watch hour time. Anyway, thanks for sticking around, and I hope that you join in on the next video. I think that is going to be a crazy one, hopefully, but we'll have to see. So with that said, thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and notification bell and all of these things. And that's the end. I will catch you in the next video.